Hi, everybody. Um, First of all, before I start, I'm happy that you all still stay here in this room because I'm actually going to talk about cloud. And cloud is not the biggest thing anymore, as you know, because, well, when I started at the Rabobank, it was big data, then it was cloud, then it is ESG, and now it's AI. So please stay because cloud is actually something we're doing. AI is something that, well, we have to see. Um, Another thing, I have to apologize for my attire. I see many.
It's completely fine.
I see many. Well, maybe we have the same problem because when I packed my bag yesterday, I tried on my suits, and after COVID, they don't fit anymore. So I can buy some new ones, but actually, I made a promise to myself I have to lose some weight so I can fit in the old ones. So next year, when you see me here again and I'm wearing a suit, you can give me a compliment. Oh, Mark, you lost some weight. Great. Um, Talking about cloud. When I started working with cloud, which was about, I think, 5 years ago, I actually had it was a great experience. Um, it was, and I can tell it now after the press release, it was with Moody's. We started with Credit, Credit as a SaaS solution, software as a service. And actually, it was a great ride because, well, we were working in cloud, so we thought, okay, software as a service, so we don't have to worry anymore about is it working or not. It works. And basically it did. The other big thing was that it was on a credit. And well, I heard a lot of discussions today about working together with the regulators. Working with other credit together with the regulators was really a great experience. It was new to them as well. So we had a lot of discussions. What kind of data do you need? And we had an open discussion as well. So in the end, we delivered the report, and we did that with and that's my personal benefit about this. We did this with a real agile team. We worked really closely with the business, with IT, with Moody's, but also with the regulator. So that was really working together. So we were on time. It was great. We did it. Now talking a little bit about our cloud journey so far. I don't have a zillion slides, I only have a few. And then after we have many opportunities to ask some questions. But where are we with the Rabobank at the moment? We, of course, have a cloud strategy, as every bank. And you see here some of the key stakes that we have. And I will emphasize on them a little bit on each of them. Stability and reliability. Yes, of course, we're a bank. Stuff is supposed to work. Especially, and you know it all, especially if you work for a bank, there are critical periods coming. December, everybody gets an extra payment in the Netherlands, so everybody starts checking, is my salary already in? And then they already start spending it. So what we have to have a freeze because the amount of data calls on the system is tremendous. So, and that's the moment that your system really has to prove it's stable. It should deliver. And that's also with cloud. Normally it's stable, but we also saw some glitches last couple of months that, especially for instance with Azure, we saw that it didn't work for quite a while. And if that happens in that period, we have a big problem. So we have to work on stability and reliability together with our cloud providers. Security and compliance, yes, of course. But still, we need to fill it in. It has to be done. And we have to do contracts and stuff, all that stuff. I will get to that later on as well. Cost control. Yeah, oh yeah, you save a lot of money. Yeah, but it's like my teenagers. Shower is always available. It's like having a developer with tremendous capacity available. My teenagers, when I don't stop them, they shower 5 times a day because, oh, shower again. And the same is with developers. Hey, I can do that report again. I can have another instance. Wow, no, I have another instance. So you also have to tell them, guys, it costs money. So be aware what you're doing. So yes, you can save money, but you really have to take your precautions to do so. The last two, agility and new opportunities. And that's why I made the statement that this is not the biggest thing anymore. We're in a learning curve. And actually, I think the last 2 years, we really start using the agility and also having the new opportunities that we start doing with the cloud. Everybody working in the cloud, sharing knowledge with each other, that takes time. So also with artificial intelligence, I think, and we're going to have a discussion on that later on, it will take time as well. And we see that now with cloud as well. It takes time. It takes time for the developers to work with it. It takes time to share with each other what is possible and what isn't possible. Where are we at the Rabobank at the moment? We're not fully cloud. We're on what we call a hybrid landscape. We see that most of the applications which are software as a service, well, they are in cloud as we speak. But we also see that, for instance, the banking, the real hardcore banking systems, they're still on-prem. Within my own department, there are still some stuff running on mainframe. And that the good thing about mainframe is it's so reliable, it never goes down. And you have to be sure for some of the systems that they never go down. They're stable. So we have to see, okay, how can we move on? What we do embrace is the way of working of cloud. So the collaboration with cloud, the security with cloud. So that's the stuff we embrace. And yes, we will slightly move over to more and more cloud. If it becomes everything will go to the cloud, the public cloud, I'm not sure. Maybe some stuff will stay on-prem. This about the cloud and why we went there. Now the little story about our experience with Regnology going to the cloud. As most of you were who was working with Regnology today and with a lot of vendors, we were on-prem, some are on a private cloud vendor, and now we fully go to public. So we did a pilot, and we of course had some success criteria. When is it successful? When do we say yes to it? Because, well, maybe it's, I didn't hear that today. A business case? You still make business cases? I was surprised because I'm actually now working for about 12 years for the Rabobank. Before that was in the process industry. And every euro you spent, you had to make a business case. Now I come to the banking and business case. Mark, what are you talking about? We make a business case for this one because I really like this. Make a business case. Is it valuable that we do this? So what we actually see is that we see, we say, oh, what's the scaling potential? It's like, I always make the comparison with my electric car. My electric car, the cost of ownership is very low. But I cannot go, because I have 4 teenagers, on the winter sports with my electric car. So I rent a van for that. And still, the cost of ownership is very low. The same is with the scaling potential for our reports. Our reports, the discussion was just, a lot of reports only run once a month or once a quarter. And why do you need a big machine for running a report once a month? So the potential with public cloud is really great because you can run it once a month, turn it down, and next month you run it again. You saved a lot of money. You have to avoid that your developers start clicking because they want to improve the report every day or every minute. So that's something you have to control. On performance, performance is always a big issue. We see that we take a tremendous amount of time to run our reports. And we really have a key performance indicator that says we have to do our reporting much quicker. And part of this reporting is also we have our run times to be improved. Simple example, our co-rep report, when we did it a year ago, and we're still somewhat on-prem or somewhat in the public cloud at the moment, it runs for 8 or 10 hours. When we did it in the public cloud, I think it took 2 hours. And having all those reports together, it will save tremendous lot of money. I will have some stats on that later on as well. Yes, and of course, also we have to have some conditions because moving to cloud doesn't mean that you just sign at the X. No, you have to be sure that security is covered. You have to be sure that compliance is covered. The service quality is covered. So that's all the stuff we took as well. And yes, looking at the next slide, we were successful in this pilot. We actually made great progress. Not everything went smooth, but most of the stuff you see, we really reduced our run times. We also saw that concurrently running was also being improved. So we see a lot of advantages running our stuff in the cloud. This is specifically important, getting back to the discussion before, is when you have to do more reports, more day-to-day reports, more online reporting, stuff like that. You need that to be quickly available and not run for 8 hours. It's like coming in the morning, click. And now when you go home, you finally have your report. That's not the way you want it. So we see really advantages in running the reports in the cloud. To conclude my story, are we happy? Yes, we are. So this has a happy ending. Cost improvement, yes, but get it under control because it can go bazooka if you don't watch it. We also saw performance really getting up. We had long discussions, negotiations about the contract. Marta can tell you everything about it, but we agreed upon it. And some stuff we have to see if it starts working, because also Regnology is developing as well in the next steps, for instance, on the APIs, on the batch management. We know this is going to come, but that's why you see that's not yet a positive one, but it's something that we think that will improve. Anton, cool. That's my story, and I kept it, I think, within 10 minutes. Yeah, almost.
Thank you very much, Mark. Come, join us. Thank you very much, Mark. So as Rob mentioned, today is not about Regnology, but it happens that Mark is using Regnology. So you have a glimpse of what we're doing in what we call our cloud. It's something that we will be covering at length tomorrow. If you're interested, we have dedicated sessions then, and we will take all the questions about our cloud. But today is more about cloud in our industry. Joining with Mark, that you already know, is Volker at the end here, with the CTO of Clearstream, that will be joining us in the panel, and Jo, that is also the head of financial services at Google for Germany. When we prepared the sessions, we were like, what themes do we want to address? What people will be interesting to discuss about? And since this morning, I kind of lost count of how many times I heard about AI, ML, cloud, and also some things very interesting in the previous panel say it's just infrastructure. Can't be that hard to get it together. Just trust me, I've been doing infrastructure for 20 years. Sometimes it's a bit harder than you think. But to start with the panel, Volker, I would be interesting. So Clearstream is very much as a clear journey in cloud, and you're highly regulated because of what you do at Clearstream. You consider systemic in Europe based on the service you provide to the industry. Yet you seem to be spearing the cloud transformation here in Germany and Luxembourg and so on and so forth. Can you walk us through a bit, the decision process and the reason why you're doing it?
Yes, sure. Well, first of all, it looks a little bit like a contrast between being super regulated and on the other hand going to cloud, but I think there are two main reasons for that. One thing is, what is our competitive environment? So what is our business landscape which we are? And this is honestly pretty small. So there is not so many CSDs in Europe, basically one per country. So it's a very, very, very small pond, and everybody's fighting for the share. So either you're at the top or you're at the bottom. There is no middle ground. So basically meaning you have to chase for making sure your customers get what they need, making sure they get it at the best ability, making sure you get the best talents, making sure you can deliver all the time. So 99.9, what we have heard is nice, but actually this is also why we still run a big thing on the mainframe, which we're shifting. So that journey is actually starting from stability going into stability. So actually I don't think it's preventable. So we have to get fast. We have to get to the most feasible environment, so the most fitting environment for us. And this is why I think cloud offers a solution to foster our services. So that's basically what's behind. Now this is all super nice, enthusiastic talk. In the end, there are, of course, you have to overcome questions from regulators because it is pretty new. So i.e. you have to get into a real dialogue, which I think worked extremely well. We are in very, very close connection to the regulators. We discuss how do we get on with contractual clauses, etc., because of course there's doubts, but as always. And secondly, I think what you really have to show is you can only move a critical business into the cloud when you have a working risk control. So in here, we're talking information security risk control, we're talking IT risk control. So you have to be aware of what you're doing. And so this is a very key thing. And this is something that you can only do in collaboration with the one who makes the rules. And also to see how much risk do I bear and what can I offer to customers? So what can I basically tell the customers how reliable their data are? And so this basically means I think it's inevitable to go there, because I really think that it's very, very tough, very close by to get the right talent on board, to get the right tools, to have the right answers for things like business continuity if you do not go cloud. I think we're running out of answers for those questions. And I think this is why I think there's an urge. At the same time, I say this cannot be a rush. You have to do it in an evolution step. You can only do it in cooperation with the regulators. You have to make sure that also you're taking your customers with you. So offer migration paths to them. So I think there is a very clear way why we're doing it, but also very clearly this sets very, very clear conditions to how you do it.
Cool. Thank you, Volker. This is meant to be very interactive. So please, if you have any questions in the room or online, please do stop us, because at the end of the day, we're here to exchange and discuss with you guys either now. Oh, okay, that was quick.
You get what you ask for.
No, I love. By the way, we have a culture of loving hard questions at Regnology, so please don't be afraid.
A quick question to Mark. How did you, or how do you solve the problem that if employee is losing your bank, is not losing, leaving your bank, and you have to revoke his user on the cloud? How do you manage this process?
We give them access via single sign-on. So when we cut that off, he also has no more access to the cloud. So he doesn't have direct access to the cloud. Mm-hmm. It goes via our systems.
So you have an own administration team,
exactly,
which operates the cloud and which takes care of like revoking users and
exactly.
stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. That was very quick. I liked it. So please don't be afraid to ask questions. We have a bit of a session tomorrow, as I mentioned, on our cloud, but there is one question actually I want to ask you today, because it's something that's coming up more and more often nowadays is, DORA. We've been talking about DORA for, at least 2 or 3 years, but that's becoming real in early 25, so almost in a year. This will have a huge impact for you. This will have a huge impact for me, and this will have a huge impact for your industry. What's your view at Google for DORA? You see this as a good thing, a bad thing? What's your feeling?
Well, I think it clearly is a good thing. It takes complexity out. It will speed up things. It takes risk out. And it delivers to all of us efficiencies, I think. We've been now in the FSI space, I think, through phase 1 of the cloud. Now, basically, with DORA coming, we are entering phase 2, because things will be harmonized and more standardized, which is always a good thing. The one thing I would say is we've got a lot of benefits. We've got only 1 year left. And that means we all together need to really accelerate a bit, I think. When you look at where we stand, on that we are halfway through the journey now. We started in January this year, and we've got till January 2025. I think we all kind of worked on the basics, but the implementation is still, I think, lagging a bit behind. But looking perhaps first on the benefits and on the positives, I think, for FSI companies, because things will be harmonized across countries and also across sectors, if your company is playing in insurance and in banking at the same time. Today, there were 2 different kind of frameworks, and now it will all be harmonized. And that means, you need to have less people doing the same kind of work. If there's, for example, testing, or if there is an incident response, you need to multiply that kind of work, and that will go away in the future, and that is, I think, fantastic. And by the way, it will also help, compared to the discussion before, it will help to establish kind of that one data base that allows you to run basically all the reports from, and today that's not really possible. For us, for Google, it really helps because also, again, we today talk to many different regulators. We need to cater to those, and through direct oversight, we have that direct communication channel even more than in the past. Of course, we talked already in the past to regulators, but now it's a constant flow. And now what that will translate into is an even closer understanding of us, of the regulatory requirements, and then the same for the regulator of how we work. Because we're coming from a world where we were treated as outsourcing, which it's not. There are some components, but it's a different animal. And I think with DORA, we are getting there. What I also like as a European, as a German, is it takes a bit longer, but if we get it right, we get it right. And with DORA, we got it right. And just like with GDPR, which is the framework now in Latin America and so forth that everyone aspires to, I think DORA will also set really the tone globally for regulation of IT providers. In terms of timing, when we look at that piece, I said we need to accelerate a bit. We've been getting ready since 3 years. We've been talking to the regulators since 2020. We've been consulting them, again, sharing our understanding, driving the regulators' understanding up, and then again, understanding what do you need, what does the regulator need, and adjusting then on our side, our contracts, products. From a security perspective, we really need to make sure that we've got everything in place to support financial service companies, to support the regulators. And we've been getting ready for 3 years. Where we are now at is really rolling that out to our customers. That means we will sign, or not assign, but with our existing customers, update the contracts. We will look at the security posture and really make sure that everything you need is ultimately in place to meet the DORA requirements. And that's why we've been hiring over the last 2-3 years already people from your industry. We've been hiring, for example, the CISO of Commerzbank, who's working now for us and who goes out. You can say stealing, but the thing is, Igor goes out and has been sitting on your side a year ago and knows exactly how it feels like and what the problems are that we need to solve for you. And now he goes, sits with you. There's no sales guy anywhere close to be seen. And he coaches you through that process of what you need to make sure within DORA also to make sure that you can use the cloud in a pragmatic and fast and a fundamental way.
Thank you. We will have a deeper dive in DORA tomorrow in the cloud session tomorrow morning. But I've seen you nodding a lot at the end, Volker, and I know we quickly talked about it. Do you want to add your perspective quickly on DORA?
Yeah, sure. I mean, DORA, as Joachim said, DORA is a challenge. I mean, it comes quite as a step in terms of velocity, but I think it can be a very big enabler because it's today one of the entry points of regulation is they go through the banks and the banks go to the infrastructures. And this kind of indirect way basically means we all have to do the same steps versus a certain provider. And we all have to do our exact assessments, et cetera, et cetera. We will also have to do this in the future. But what we are now doing is we are having a regulation that applies to the different technology providers, which are critical. And this basically enables me kind of like a proof, kind of like a stamp there where I can go. And this offers a lot of making safer, hopefully quicker decisions. I think we have a much more, I mean, we exchange each other, but I think there is a much quicker way of doing controls. There is a streamlined way of also collaborate between provider and the customer. So I think if we get it right, it's really an enabler. I mean, there is quite a rush. I mean, not all of the details are known yet. If I think
some further decision will
exactly,
be announced in July.
but like, which is fine. I think the intention and I think the way is the right thing. Absolutely.
Good. Thank you very much. I'm just checking the room. Last time I asked if you want to ask a question. No, this time not around. Cool. Mark, you quickly touched upon the complexity of compliance and contracts when you moved from a private cloud to public cloud. Yet, from my perspective, it was quite efficient. You know, I expected it to be a lot more complexity, a lot more structure. Can you explain a bit, how it's done on your side? Like, how do you manage it to make it so efficient at the end? From my perspective, how did you orchestrate it into Rabobank to be so efficient?
Well, actually, it took a little while, so we did have some discussions. But what happened is that we really matured within the Rabobank as well. We really matured on what we can expect from our cloud vendors. So we first had a standardized contract, we call it, and we had a standardized process, which we in the Rabobank, don't ask me why, we call it the CUT project, CUT process, which was really like you have to go to 10 different hoops. And then we really, within Rabobank, sorted out, okay, what's really important for a cloud contract. And we put that in our own contract. And what we actually do is that is the contract we negotiate with our vendors. So, and sometimes you have some stupid things to discuss, like for instance, audit. How many times can you do an audit? If it's up to regulator, you have to do an audit, say every month or every given time. But if every customer comes in to do an audit, you probably need people that facilitate that audit, those audits all the time. So you have to come up with an agreement. Okay, one audit a year, that's sufficient. Or you hoop on to, okay, if they do one audit a year and we can also use that one as well, okay, that's sufficient. So that's how you make up the contract, but it's also experience. So that's actually what we did. We used our experience, we used the experiences also from our cloud providers, and then you make the deal.
But so at the end of the day, it's more from what you're describing in the discussion we had in the past. I still believe it was fast. Trust me. It's more. The questions are not so much about is my data secure, is the processes all right. It's more like how can I make sure that I have the compliance framework that I used to have private cloud built for like 20 years. How can I replicate this framework on my public cloud? Make sure I end up checking the same boxes so I can fit the same certification, the same ISO regulation. But it's not so much about is the cloud secure, is it?
Sometimes it is, because people have the tendency to believe always what is told to you. Like everybody does it, so why should I do it? But you have to check it. You have to be sure. Like for instance, also like the question, how do we when people, we do that via single sign-on. So we know that our system does check who has entrance and who has entrance to the cloud. So those are the things you have to check. It's underestimated that, oh yeah, it's a big vendor, so it should be okay. No, you really have to go sometimes into the nitty-gritty details, check, and then of course there's trust, but you also have to check that again. So that's, and when it's your own system, it's easier to check. You can, well, we can walk into our own data centers and we can check if the security is okay. We cannot do that, for instance, at Google. They do not really like when Rabobank knocks at the door. Hey guys, we want to have a security check. So you have to make agreements upon that. So that's what you have to do.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Volker, you said something, and I wanted to follow up on what you discussed on the reason for the cloud strategy that you have at Clearstream is the talent element that you mentioned. And from the discussion we had before, you basically said, also if I don't do this, my attractiveness to the industry to hire the right talents, to be able to drive my AI ML projects, to be able to drive change is diminishing very rapidly. That was quite, but can you?
Sure. I mean, in the end, I mean, we as a bank, like many other banks, basically built up their systems in the 90s and basically then added a lot of complexity, I think, until end of the 90s, early 2000s. So basically our most of our stack that delivers the business processes is like 25 plus years old. And it is a super situation that we have such a stable environment employee-wise, that we have so many people who still know all of these processes. But that, I mean, just count back. I mean, if the people came 25 years and joined you, how old are they now? So we are going through a change of our employees. So, and this is now IE, and this is what we see at a lot of talent fairs, etc. So you actually see there's a run on those talents, and what can I offer them? If I offer them the compiler that I used to program when I started 25 years ago, well, not so super. The best answer I can give them. Next thing is, a lot of those really great talents come from developing mobile apps. Or how do you find it? You cannot do as a test with them. You cannot run with them through a hackathon, and then you basically put them on an environment where you deliver twice per year a release, where you basically have everything waterfall driven, and in the worst, basically having 80 columns and 25 lines. This is not where the people will take a long journey with you, because I mean, you have to have the talent, you have to onboard the talent, you have to motivate them, and you have to make them stay. And I think this is only something if you really have an attractive environment, and the people get more and more technical. It's not so much anymore that the people are so interested in the functional flows. You have to have IT talent that really likes coding, and so you have to offer it to them. So very, very easily.
No, I really liked the first time when we talked about this. There's I wanted to share with the audience. I'm just scrutinizing the audience to see any. Yeah, there is a big two hands. Maybe whomever is going to get the mic first. Maciej here or over there. Maybe Maciej, because you work with us, we're going to give the mic to the other person first. Just let's be inclusive.
Maybe it's a generic question to all of you, but specifically maybe to the Rabobank. I mean, you show in one of the slides that you're going to hybrid. I mean, hybrid, for instance, is something that we always try to avoid, to be honest, because you are at complexity. On the top of that, we have multi-cloud in most of our setups, which again adds complexity. Complexity, we know that is the enemy as well of cost control and business continuity and resilience. Okay, are you adjusting your cloud strategies based on what happened now in the bank? Because I can tell you from the States, we are more and more concerned, and more organizations are whether stopping the go to the cloud or rethinking the strategy or going and finding new partners to really create a private cloud.
Yep. We have the same struggle, actually. We our first go at cloud was full cloud. It's like, okay, the full stack into the cloud. We want to actually get rid of our own data centers. Then we found out that, well, yes, it was easy for quite a lot of applications, especially the SaaS ones. But we also see now that for some of the core applications, it's rather difficult to move them to the cloud. And that goes with stability, but also with the business case. So that's why we say hybrid, because we do not want to force a complete move to the cloud, which means that doesn't mean that we're not going to do them eventually. But for some of the applications, especially in the payments area, we say, okay, that's now at the moment, we stick with what we have. Yes, we do use the connections, for instance, because especially the big payment applications have a lot of applications around them and supporting them. Those can go to the cloud, but the engine themselves stays within our on-prem data centers. And that's not a definite no. So we keep tracking the developments, but for the moment, it's okay. This is what it is. And yes, it adds complexity. And that's why I also say that, and that was also on that slide, that we embrace the way of working with cloud. So we do see that there is added value, that everybody works in the same way. That helps.
And thanks, Mark. I might be preaching a bit for my own church here, but I do see and as someone pointed out I'm more on the tech side than the business side, hence not the suit. But from a tech perspective, I'm really convinced that if the organizations don't start transforming towards at least some hyperscalers' journey, at some point it will be a problem for innovations. Because if you look at all the large language, so the AI ML topics, the ChatGPT and so on and so forth, that was also mentioned in the previous panel, it's not something that you will ever be capable of doing in a private cloud, because the competition to get access to GPUs from NVIDIA and so on and so forth is so fierce that it's going to be impossible for anyone to build independently. So it's a complex environment to navigate, but like that's my tech perspective on it. But you might be missing out on some opportunities by not using the hyperscalers.
And can I just add?
Yeah.
And yes, I'm the cloud guy, but what I'm seeing across all our customers is there's that storming, norming, and performing, and I think we went through the storming phase now. Cloud was, like Mark said, the big thing on the Gartner hype curve, and I think now kind of reality sets in, and the reality is, like you said, there are some workloads that are better off. You don't touch them, you just keep them in your data center. But like you said, and like you said, if you want to drive innovation, if you want to get access to young talents want to change the world. And young consumers and customers have different expectations. And for them, you need to build something different than what exists today. And for that, the cloud, I think, is perfect, especially also, like you said, with AI now coming. There's no way around that. And the business case is there. And cloud is always, if you look at cloud, now I'm back. If you look at cloud like a cost case, won't fly. If you look at cloud as a kind of business generation innovation case, then you will win always, I think.
Thanks. Maciej, you wanted to...
Just a short question to all of you, maybe Volker, starting with you and Mark. Last 2 months, I spoke, I think, to 50 different banks about the cloud strategies. And what is really exciting is almost every bank has a cloud strategy. Some of them have a cloud strategy with Google, some are having with your dear competitors. What is, however, interesting is that I think the banking industry underestimates that vendors have also cloud strategies, which are resulting in cloud only or SaaS only approaches. And very rarely I found that banks are having the consideration of how the vendors world is moving alongside their own strategies. Some of your reflections, because Mark, you had SaaS on your agenda. Volker, I think discussion with you were a bit different, but it was really interesting. So everybody has a cloud strategy, but this cloud strategy sometimes are missing the fact that vendors will have SaaS only strategy. And this is where these two words clashes, because sometimes we have a mismatch of hyperscaler, obviously. So maybe some reflection of, how you see cloud strategy, in particular, the SaaS portion, how the vendors work, move alongside the financial services world.
Maybe Mark, you want to start, because we had this discussion initially, because we deliver through Google, but that's basically our decision. We ultimately, you sign a contract with us, and the fact that we choose Google is our decision. It has no impact on you. And we had this discussion because you chose AWS, if I recall properly.
Well, we actually have all big cloud providers we have in-house. With SaaS, for me, it's very simple. It's like building a house. To make that comparison, I'm not a constructor. I can do some stuff at home, but I'm not really into how to build a house. So what I do is I hire a constructor, and he takes care of it. When something goes wrong with the bathroom, when something goes wrong with the plumber, he takes care of it. I don't have to worry like you have hired the plumber, you have hired an electrician, fix it with the electrician. No, I go to the constructor and say, hey, fix it. And the same goes with cloud. When something goes wrong with our reports, I go to Regnology. I do not want to go to Google. Yeah. And I don't want the discussion. Yeah, well, it's Google. No, it's Regnology. No, Regnology, fix it. That's my intention. I don't want to shop around on this one. And that's why I also make, especially when SaaS contracts, I go to the provider and say, okay, fix it. So I have a contract with the provider, and that's it.
Question, Rob?
So you talked, Mark, about some applications, don't move to cloud or don't move to cloud in the foreseeable future. Where do you see that line being drawn? So you talked about payments. That's difficult for you to think about moving to cloud. What about core banking systems, for example?
Those are, at the moment, they are tough to move to the cloud because we see that they're, and you see every bank has built them. They're very specifically built for a specific bank. And we have people running them with specific knowledge, and transferring those to the cloud is very difficult. What I actually see happening is that there will be new applications taking over, built upon cloud technology, but moving the current stack into the cloud doesn't bring any value for us.
But doesn't that come back to Volker's point about talent, right?
Exactly.
Which if you've got, the new innovators, their cloud, you've got your legacy systems which aren't, it makes it harder and harder for you to keep the talent to maintain those systems.
Exactly, and so that we say for most of the applications, they can move to the cloud. For some, it will take maybe a little bit longer time.
Just to follow up, because sometimes when we say it cannot be moved to cloud is because of what we call the workload. It's a mainframe. You cannot move a mainframe to the cloud. It's just too complex because mainframe were built, I don't know, 30 years ago and so on and so forth. Actually, there's a bit of misconception on that because all the hyperscalers have very, very strong programs to actually lift and shift mainframe workloads to the cloud. So don't get me wrong, you don't get the benefits of the agility of the cloud where you can, scale up and down and so on and so forth. But talking to some people I know in industry from banks, they do see some benefits because they're de-risking the fact that getting the hardware to run those large legacy programs is getting harder and harder and harder. So, I don't know if it's something, I don't know if it's something you've explored at Clearstream or not, that space specifically, but I find it quite interesting. It's not my core space, but I did find it quite interesting.
Well, we at the German CSD, we have a very big mainframe stack. So very clear, and we are on our way to move this to what we call cloud technology. So i.e. it will, whether we will do it as a target operating model in the cloud or not will depend also on many questions. One of those questions is, does it make sense from also a data transfer perspective? I mean, do we reach the performance if we are carrying over data all the time? The other one is, how much does this fit to the strategies of our customers? I mean, it doesn't make sense if they all come through one MQ series into our data center and then we shift it over to Joule. So it just may not make sense. So there will be, I think, at the moment, a certain point on where you see kind of like a long tail. So things which economically, technology-wise won't make sense anymore. But there will be also a very big stack that we will transform. And the question, I think this is also what Mathieu said or asked on the SaaS question for me. There, as long as we're talking standardized services, I think SaaS is more favorable because I really don't get stuck between software provider and operator. But as soon as you have specific business models, specific infrastructure, specific programming, I think you have to make sure you refactor your own stack. And there is not only the way of running mainframe application in the cloud, you can also do the opposite way, which we have done. So basically, you can actually program and have it cloudable on a mainframe, and then do lift and shift as soon as you have sorted out all the IT security details, all the compliance details, etc., and then shift it over.
And the network element is something we tend to forget in the regulatory reporting space because it's not so relevant. But if you extend it to payments and so on and so forth, the industry, and it's the same for trading, it's the same for many industry, with the industry built for a couple decades, just point-to-point connections in data centers physically. If you move to the cloud, you need to rebuild everything, and then it creates a drag, and then the business case that you mentioned is not so viable anymore. We probably have time for one last question, if anyone feels brave.
No, there.
There is one over there at the back from a good friend. Otherwise, it was Bobby, but
Oh.
No, go for it.
Okay. Justin Hingrani, Duco. So you actually just mentioned operating model. I think that's a really good point. How much in your anyone's journey here to the cloud, is about also shifting the operating model and not just trying to lift and shift old processes onto the cloud.
So the question is how we do it, or the question is? Yeah.
So just to summarize the question, because people online didn't get the sound, so I'll just summarize it. It's you have the technological pillar that you take the software from on-prem and you move it to the cloud. But if you want to be fully efficient, you also need to rework your processes. Otherwise, you only have half of the benefits. So Volker, do you want to take it?
Yeah,
I think we need to stop.
I think it's one core pillar. We shouldn't think all the time about software development and then simply smashing it somewhere where somebody operates it. This won't work. I think the core pillar is the target operating model, honestly. I think, and this is, I mean, everybody can have his own answers on this, but the approach that we are taking is basically building up small groups within the same teams. We have the people sitting who operate the mainframe, who operate the on-prem, and who operate the cloud in the same team. Because I still think change of technology is one thing, and you can train people on that, you can onboard new talents, but getting the spirit of running 100% availability is a different thing. And that's a cultural thing. And that takes a long while to train the teams. And so I think this is a transition you have to build into the migration model.
And it's not only IT. Sorry.
No, go, just
it's not only
we're
IT.
late already, so let's be late for real.
It's not only IT, you need to bring the business guys.
Yes.
So it's not like you move from IT projects to products where the business guy is working with the IT team to constantly update that product.
Thank you very much, Volker, you, Mark. Thank you very much for joining us today.